So this weekend, Canelo Alvarez takes on Jaime Munguia. It still surprises me how much sort of disrespect or lack of appreciation Canelo gets for his career, especially now, especially if you read through the comments sort of recently regarding this fight and the whole notion that he's ducking Benavidez, blah blah blah. I suppose you could say there's an element of that, couldn't you? I said it in the past. It looked like there was a duck going on where Benavidez was concerned. But that doesn't negate what he's done in the past, or what he's done in the past. The way that he cleared up at 168 inside 12 months and took the titles individually off guys. How often do you see that done? Canelo's kind of proved himself to me. All-time great. He's got to be, hasn't he, Canelo? Just the lack of respect and the lack of recognition he gets is a bit weird. But again, we're in that realm of boxing fans, aren't we? That are never happy, always going to find someone to troll. Jaime Munguia, we talk about how Callum Smith was big for the weight and how he makes the weight, and even how Benavidez is big for the weight and makes the weight. But Munguia's 6 foot. I think he's a big lad for 168. A lot of people are disappointed because this fight, they see it as a consolation for not getting the Benavidez fight. I'm not. Although you look at Benavidez and say, yes, he's credible, he should possibly get the shot at Canelo. I look at Munguia and I think in terms of pure entertainment, in terms of pure styles gelling, I think Munguia is a great fight. I said that when it was announced. There's an element of consolation about it. But I see the Munguia fight is stylistically, I think that's fantastic for how long this lasts. Munguia's style is very much one-directional, isn't it? He comes forward. He kind of only knows one way, and that's forward, which blends fantastic for pretty much any fight he's in. Munguia's very quick, got very quick hands, got very good volume, very good output. He, against Sergey Derevyanchenko, that was a great fight, by the way. I'm sure you will watch that, but if you haven't, go and watch that. That's a real war. The problem with his style is he gets caught. When you're an all-out offensive, come-forward pressure fighter, which essentially he is, you are going to come up against a wall at times, and you are going to take punishment yourself. And against Derevyanchenko, he was plainly, for me, hurt on a few occasions. Nevertheless, regardless, his powers of recovery were good. And he came back every time. Derevyanchenko's not a massive puncher. He's a good puncher, not a massive puncher. And he's kind of in the mantle of an official gatekeeper now. So, nonetheless, good performance. John Ryder, and of course the comparisons will be drawn. Common opponent. John Ryder taking Canelo the distance, putting on a really good showing, albeit taking a fucking huge amount of punishment in the process. And you don't really know how much that sort of performance and that fight took out of John Ryder. Obviously, he fought Munguia after that, and that at this point has been his last fight, going into retirement after that. So you never know, had Munguia took Ryder first and then Canelo took Ryder afterwards, you don't know how much that would have changed those results or the impact on Ryder's career. But certainly there's a comparative opponent, and they were immediate. So draw from that what you will. I'm not always convinced that means a whole lot, but certainly the beating that Canelo took and the bravery that he showed against Canelo, that is a fight that will no doubt age a fighter in fight years, should we say. You forget, don't you, that Canelo is only 33, I think. Seems to have been around forever, but I think he's one of those guys. He turned pro at 17 or something. So Canelo has been around a long time, but only 33. But fight years, you could say he's a lot older than that. I remember Bob Arum saying once that, describing Canelo as slow as molasses. And there's an element of truth to that. Canelo's never had fast feet. He's always had quite slow feet. And I think the fact that if you combine all the attributes that Bivol had, he was essentially output, movement, combination punching, and foot speed. And that's always going to give Canelo problems. So with the unnatural size difference, Bivol being naturally the bigger guy, Canelo having slow feet and always struggling with people with good movement and fast hands, Bivol had all the ingredients really, and should have beaten Canelo, and did convincingly. You know, he always should have. All the attributes Bivol had were the ones that were going to cause Canelo problems. Proved so, beaten convincingly. The most comprehensive beating Canelo has had as a professional, quite evidently. But he should have done with those attributes. One thing I'll say about Canelo, and I don't think it's in doubt, not for me, is there a better chin in world boxing today? Does anyone take a shot better than Canelo does in world boxing today? I'm not sure there is anyone with a better chin than Canelo. You can argue about the Golovkin defeats. Now, for me, I thought Canelo beat Golovkin the second time. A lot of people don't agree. Fair enough. I thought the first fight was a lot closer than everyone thought. I thought Golovkin edged it, but I thought the second one Canelo won for me, personally. But you know, you have to look at Canelo's career and think, you know, all-time great. Everything he's done, everything he's achieved, and all the talk about the ducking of Benavidez, it kind of, people will use that and sort of use that as an indicator that Canelo is a guy that ducks other guys. Unfortunately, the way of boxing is this: when you reach the status that Canelo has, and as I've said this many times before, boxing suffers from a lack of structure for me. That's a lot of the problems in boxing are down to the inherent lack of structure that boxing has. But it means that when you reach the status that Canelo has, and you've done the things he's done and had the career he's done, you kind of get to choose if and when you fight your opponents, when it suits you, when it doesn't suit you, and when that's just not good, when that time is just not good. You won't fight them, you don't have to. You know, and we can reverse this and say that Floyd Mayweather fought Canelo at a good time for Mayweather. So, you know, everyone's done it. Do we say that devalues Floyd's career because he's done the same on many occasions? No, that's, unfortunately, that's just the way boxing works, and that's just the pick and choose element that is there when you've reached the status that those guys have. Does it detract from their careers, or does it detract from their ability and their skill and their standing? No, of course it doesn't. That's just the way boxing works, I'm afraid. Isn't right, you know, isn't just, but it is. So this fight, I think, is really, really tasty, really tasty. Munguia only knowing one way to come, and that is come forward. I think if Munguia, and at 33, and as we said, Canelo is young in age, in chronological terms, but in fight years, he's getting on, you could say. And I don't think any of us would argue that Canelo is not the peak Canelo anymore. I think peak Canelo lasted for so long, and a peak anyone only lasts for a finite period of time. So I think we've seen that. Do I necessarily think Canelo is on the slide? I don't think because you're not at your peak means you're not on the slide. I think they're two very different things. You know, I think there's a period in between. There's a sort of a limbo in between peak and slide that exists, and it doesn't mean you're either of the two, but you're something in between. I think that's where Canelo is now. But I think Munguia's hand speed will give Canelo problems. I think that his hand speed and volume will give Canelo problems. The problem with me is that if Munguia cannot make a dent in Canelo, Munguia's a good puncher, undoubtedly, but he's not a conclusively concussive puncher. Canelo, I don't think is. I think Canelo has shown one-punch knockout power, depending on the opposition, but I don't think you'd describe Canelo as a one-punch knockout artist. He's a concussive, thudding volume puncher. His punches have effect over the course of a fight because of he's just a heavy-handed, clubbing, heavy-handed puncher. And the damage is done with the accumulation of those shots in general over the course of a fight. if Munguia's punches don't have any effect, he'll land on Canelo. Undoubtedly, he will land on Canelo. He will get himself in positions with his faster hands and I believe faster feet. He'll get himself in positions where he will land punches. But if he can't make a dent in Canelo with that volume and that hand speed, the problem is that will put Munguia in position where he can get hit by Canelo's counter punching. Canelo's always been a fantastic counter puncher and he's always disguised punches very well. What he lacks in hand speed and foot speed, he makes up for in craft and nous. He will land those shots because of his anticipation and his reading of the other guy. That will make up for his lack of speed and his lack of foot speed and his lack of hand speed in a lot of areas, and that will allow him to land his own shots. And the fact that Munguia is going to be there in front of Canelo and he will land his own shots, it's going to leave him in range where Canelo will also land his shots. And I think ultimately the thudding pressure and just the sheer heavy-handedness, I would expect at some point, seeing the effects that fighters like Derevyanchenko had on Munguia, who have nowhere near the seizing punch power and the seizing heavy-handedness of a Canelo. I just see at some point, I would expect at some point, Canelo's heavy-handed clubbing punches that he lands cleverly and sneakily while Munguia is advancing and landing his own shots. I just think they will tell at some point. From mid to late, I expect those to tell. Unless, out of nowhere, Canelo is suddenly not the fantastic chin that we know him to be. Will that happen? I don't really think so, but it's a possibility. But I really expect Canelo with those just absolutely... Canelo's a bull. He's a bull, isn't he? And regardless of the PED stuff and how, using a substance was aided for him to put on weight and strength, who knows? Dan Rafael, I remember watching Dan Rafael a few years ago, and he said that Canelo had proved beyond doubt, employing scientists at great cost, Canelo had proved beyond doubt that the trace elements found in his tests were proved beyond doubt to have come from contaminated meat, contaminated beef. And apparently, Dan Rafael said that, I can't remember which drug testing agency, had actually altered their parameters on the levels of the parameters in which the levels they use to indicate artificial use were actually changed on the scientific findings Canelo had paid for and proved his innocence through. Try and dig that out. I'll try and dig that out, but I definitely remember Dan Rafael saying that. So if we take account the PED accusations aside, Canelo's a bull. He's a physical specimen. He's an absolute tank, isn't he? You can see by the way he's built, his stock stature, the thick neck, the way he holds a shot is, if every fighter could be blessed with that, I'm sure they would be. But yeah, in short, I expect Canelo's just sheer heavy-handedness and almost, to use a Rocky Balboa term, blunt force trauma, I think will almost win the day against Munguia. I don't think in terms of what fighter shows what, throws what shot and technical stuff like that is greatly going to come into this that much. I think it's more about Canelo's craft and sneak that he employs when landing his own shots, his fantastic offensive counter-punching ability. Marry that with his ability to take a shot and his heavy-handedness, I think will wear Munguia down to a mid to late stoppage with an absolutely awesome show of bravery by Munguia, by both guys, in what will be a fantastically entertaining fight. Talking about Rocky Balboa, I'm going to let you into an interesting fun fact about the main man, G-Man. Now, I believe this to be true, but G might correct me if I'm wrong. G-Man, the illustrious boxing aficionado that he is, has never seen a Rocky movie. Yeah, fun fact. That's it. I'll see you all soon. I'm out.
Let's go tottering around the ring.